I just want to say to anybody who's listening right now, maybe it's been a long time since you've been in the house of God. It's not too late. If you're hearing this, it means you're listening. It means maybe there's something happening inside of you. It's not too late. Come to your senses. Get up out of the pig pen that you've been in and come back to the household of God. Come back to a Father who is waiting to run out and greet you and love you and welcome you back in. He won't condemn you. He won't put you down. He will not shame you for the fact that you were gone. He will welcome you back. And it even says he will celebrate and rejoice over you coming back to him. Jesus is showing that aspect of God, that even if your worldly father rejected you, pushed you out, didn't come fight for you, didn't come seek you, didn't welcome you back with open arms, he's showing the heart of God. He's showing the heart of God to welcome you back, to say, I accept you back. And I don't just accept you back, but I'm going to give you that ring that signifies you're part of my family. I am going to clothe you with my best robe, which in spiritual terms is he's wrapping us in his righteousness, that robe of righteousness. I just feel like once again, Jesus is trying to show us this is your heavenly Father. This is the heart of God towards you. And even if every other father figure in your life, in the physical sense, in the worldly sense, has let you down, if you turn back to the heavenly Father, you can be reconciled to him. Are you a seeker, believer, doubter, or philosopher? Are you church weary and disillusioned, or Jesus loving and digging deeper? This church welcomes you all. Join siblings Ben and Joanna Church, your hosts for the I Will Be Your Church podcast, a daily discovery of the realm of God. Grow strong in the truth of God's presence and love, so that you can say to your families, friends, co-workers, and social media worlds, I will be your church.
He who has an ear to hear, let him hear and understand. Today's parable is taken from Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 31. It's about the prodigal son. Jesus told them this story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. A few days later, his younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all his money in wild living. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, At home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am, dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. So he returned home to his father. And while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. But his father said to the servants, Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf we have been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he was found. So the party began. Meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. When he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house, and he asked one of the servants what was going on. Your brother is back, he was told, and your father has killed the fattened calf. We are celebrating because of his safe return. The older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, All these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to do. And in all that time, you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf." His father said to him, "Look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he is found." That's a pretty cool story. I mean, there's so many things we could talk about, Joanna. So many aspects of about the father, about the prodigal son, about the older brother, about the servants, about their attitudes. What's some of the things that stand out to you?
Well, every time I hear this story, I can see myself in every character of this story at different moments of my life. I know that I've been the younger son who has just wanted to go out into the world and party, and I've left the security of my relationship with God to pursue human relationships that ended up leaving me broken and feeling used. And I've come running back to my Heavenly Father, hoping to be made right. And He immediately is always been there for me in the spirit, welcoming me back, not condemning me. As in the story, I feel like He actually runs out to meet me as soon as I turn back to Him.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how far off I've gone, when I turn back to Him, I feel immediately restored in my relationship to Him. He
Mm-hmm.
restores me immediately. I don't feel condemned by Him. I don't feel shamed by Him. I don't feel like he already gave me my inheritance and now He's got nothing left to give me. Like, it just feels like as soon as I turn back, He's right there. He
Mm-hmm.
just is right there. I'm restored in relationship with Him. Not that I ever want to do it again, I don't want to run away again, and I don't believe I ever will again. But knowing that no matter how far off I went, all it took was turning back, and He was right there, ready to meet me with open arms and ready to clothe me with Himself again.
That's awesome. I think of a natural father as a father myself and a grandfather. Unless you had a terrible father, or, a father who was abusive or just a terrible person, a natural father has that love and compassion for a child. He's going to be searching his whole life. Like, you're never going to give up on your kid. I would go to the ends of the earth for my kid, and welcome him back at any moment, or my daughter or son, whatever. It doesn't matter. Even my grandchildren. That's the father, and that's a natural father. And that's kind of what this story is about. It shows that tie, that a real father never gives up. He goes the extra mile. He's always looking, even when the children are astray. A father is always looking for his children.
He's showing this father in a worldly sense who was basically disrespected by his younger son, disrespected. All he was good for was the inheritance and give it to me now and all of that. But revealing how he welcomed that son, he just set it all aside to welcome him back. And I just think for anybody listening, the problem with our humanity is so many people have not had decent fathers. They have had worldly fathers who won't seek them out, who shame them, who reject them, who push them out of the house, who don't welcome them back in. And what I love about the story in terms of the father is that Jesus is showing that aspect of God, that even if your worldly father rejected you, pushed you out, didn't come fight for you, didn't come seek you, didn't welcome you back with open arms, He's showing the heart of God. He's
Mm-hmm.
showing the heart of God to welcome you back, to say, I accept you back. And I don't just accept you back, but I'm going to give you that ring that signifies you're part of my family. I am going to clothe you with my best robe, which in spiritual terms He's wrapping us in His righteousness, that robe of righteousness. I just feel like once again, Jesus is trying to show us, this is your Heavenly Father. This is the heart of God towards you. And even if every other father figure in your life, in the physical sense, in the worldly sense, has let you down, if you turn back to the Heavenly Father, you can be reconciled to Him. I love that picture of the Father. I love that part of this story.
Mm-hmm. But I can really appreciate that father. And that's really a picture of God to the next level. This is one example of a good father and what a natural father does in this particular story. But how much more God the Father, who is looking down in love and compassion towards his children, humanity that he created. It was his idea to make us, right? And we strayed from him. We chose the darkness rather than light. I mean, I can't even comprehend that. When you think about that, it breaks your heart at all times, because we chose darkness instead of light. We chose evil instead of good. We chose death instead of life. I can't grasp that, even though I experience it every day. And yet he still was looking down, waiting for us to come home. And he provided the means. This isn't a perfect example, even though Jesus is giving this as a parable. A parable is just a story, an example. But God's even better than this father. Another part that I was thinking about is on the son, the prodigal son himself. It's a good representation of humanity in the fact that we cannot do it on our own.
Yeah.
When we try to take all the wealth or all the gifts that have been given to us, which all came from God the Father, it wasn't even ours to begin with. He gave us life. He gave us our talents, our gifts.
We didn't work for it.
Right.
He
No,
just gave it to us. Yeah.
We think we're making all this wealth and all this stuff. It's his. It all belongs to him. All the resources of the planet belong to God anyway. So even in that sense, it came from God. We didn't even, to quote President Obama, we didn't build that. It came from God. In our humanity, we think we're doing this awesome thing. We're going after it. We're using our talents. We're doing this. But this is a picture that at the end of that road, you're in a pig slop. You're nothing. Your righteousness is really like filthy rags compared to God's. And so it's really showing us in a way the state of humanity. When all is said and done, we're in the same slop as the pigs living in.
Yeah.
And we're not even as good as pigs, the dirtiest animal on the planet. They're at a higher state than us, if you think about it, because they're just a dumb animal doing what they were created to do. We're actually doing something we're not created to do in our depravity. We should have been with the Father this whole time. We should have been managing his affairs and having him oversee us. But no, we were rebellious. We tried to do it our way. And at the very end of that road is death and destruction and disparity, until finally we have ears to hear, until finally we see. And even that's a response to God reaching out to us in a sense, because he remembered who he was and he remembered his father. And he looked around and said, this isn't right. Even the servants are better than this. Man, I'll go be a servant at this point. I'll go be a slave at this point. And that shows us like our cry out to God, even in a most desperate state. And we talked about this in the last parable in our opening discussion, was that's the first step of having a hearing ear. You realize where you are. You realize there's something better. There's a Father who loves you, and somehow I got to get to him.
Yeah.
And that's your first hearing ear. And how are you going to respond to that? You're going to do what this guy says? You're going to go back home? You're going to go to the Father who's calling you, who has a home for you? The beauty of it is you don't have to go back a servant, because we saw in this parable, the Father wants you to be a son or a daughter with full rights and full blessing and sharing in the abundance that God has for you.
Although it still comes down to that choice. When you think about it, he's sitting there, he's in a pig pen, he's starving, he's filthy. And the choice in that moment was, do I return to my father or do I stay in the filth? And we know, you can look around the world and see there are people who never come to their senses, as the parable says. He came to his senses, right? There are people who they want to stay in the filth. They want to stay in the depravity, in the pigsty.
Yeah.
And so even then, it's a choice that we have. I don't know why we sometimes choose the filth. I don't know what that is about us.
And really, I think it's bondage to the enemy, to the darkness, the unclean spirit. So I think once you get to a certain state, this kind of goes beyond this parable, but we could quickly say that when you give yourself over to the darkness will take you
Yeah. It doesn't
till
give you a choice.
no, the
Darkness
darkness will
removes your
overtake
choice.
you and bind you up. It'll
Yeah.
put you in chains. And sometimes, depending on how far you go, you will not be able to come to your senses by
Yeah.
yourself. This guy, he finally looked around one day and he's like, something's, I shouldn't be here. He put two and two together. Well, when you're taken over by the enemy on various levels, you cannot come to your own senses anymore. Now you need help. Now you need some believers who know how to kick the devil out. Now you need someone stronger who's prepared, who's spiritually mature to come in and help you. Even then,
You can still
then,
choose.
you can still choose. And that's the sad part about it, because God will never override your choice. And I don't fully understand that of how we can willingly choose, especially all the way to the end, to death and destruction and ultimately hell, eternal separation from God. I don't understand how a human being could do that knowingly, but we can.
And we do it. Humanity does it. I
Look at all
also
the terrible people throughout the history of the world who have been just the most brutal, evil, sick, twisted, demented people. I just don't understand how you actually get that far, other than you've made the choice and you've walked down the road far enough that took you there.
tell you what, it's why we shouldn't even mess around with these things.
Right.
I think, when you're a young person, you think that freedom is getting to go out and party, and freedom is I get to go out and drink, and I get to go out and do drugs, and that's freedom. And don't try to bind me up so that I can't do those things, because that's freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And yet what those things end up becoming is the bondage.
Right.
It isn't freedom. That the thing that looks like freedom actually puts you into bondage and enslaves you. And it's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest trick. It's the biggest trick to say this is freedom, but really what it is bondage, and it takes over your life. And it's no longer freedom. You no longer have the choice.
Yeah.
And so it's why it's better. I mean, as young people, we don't think this way, but it's better just not to start down those paths at all.
It's kind of like, the old cliche of selling your soul to the devil. It never works out. It only works out for the devil. It never works out to the person who sold their soul, because in the end, they get robbed. They get killed. Think about it. The devil only comes to steal, kill, and to destroy.
Yeah.
Everything that's worldly and devilish and evil is stealing, killing, and destroying. So if your politics are wrapped up in that, if your attitudes, if your belief systems, if your economics, you can see, is it coming from God or coming from the devil? But it never works out for people who give into that, because they'll go down the path and eventually it'll be too far. They'll be too far gone and it's too late for them. And then the devil just throws you away and goes to somebody else.
And isn't it interesting that when people look at the Lord and they look at being a follower of Jesus, people would call it religion. I don't look at it that way, but that's what people view Christianity as just a religion. And they look at this and they say, well, that's bondage, because you have to follow all these rules and you have to, do all these things and you have to be right. And that's actually it's not it at all. All the things that God leads you down, when he says, no, I don't want you to do that thing. No, doing this is not good for you. It's not to take away your freedom. It's so that you can walk in freedom, so that you don't get bound to things that will take your life away from you, that will take you down. It's such a twisted way that the world looks at things, where following the path of loving God and loving people and living a righteous life has been turned into that's bondage.
Mm-hmm.
But going out and partying and wasting your money and drinking and whatever else we do, that's freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that's what's killing people. It's just a very twisted way. But in this story, thankfully that younger son came to his senses. He remembered his father's house.
A father is always looking for his children. And now it's maybe on siblings. Sometimes siblings aren't, siblings, there can be rivalry. But a parent, there's something different between a parent and a child and siblings. And this is like a perfect example. It's just kind of a snapshot of, what can go on in a family.
I have found in my personal life, I'm just going to be open with this. I probably have found myself in the role of the older son more times than I would like to count, where I see how maybe other people seem to be rewarded for their bad behavior while I've been maybe working hard steadily in the background. Now, this could be in the natural world with work, with friends and family, or in churches, but also spiritually, where it seems like some people have these like amazing spiritual experiences. And I'm just like slugging through each day, reading my Bible and praying and not having like any grand, spiritual experiences. And sometimes that can become embittering, like this older son who's looking and saying, "What the heck? I've been here all this time. I'm not getting all this good stuff. Faithful. I've been faithful all these years." And we get angry because it doesn't seem fair. I've found myself in that position many times. And yet, I really love what the father says to that older son. He says, "Look, my dear son."
Mm-hmm.
The father sees that son. He sees that person who is staying faithful in the hard times, staying faithful in the good times. He's there day in, day out. You're dear to him. I'm dear to him when I do that. When I'm just in there with him every day, working those fields, he says, "Look, my dear son, everything I have is yours." That speaks to my heart, that even when it seems like other people are being blessed or rewarded, God the Father speaks to my heart saying, "Everything I have, it's yours." No matter what is happening for other people, no matter how they're being celebrated, even after they've made poor decisions, God has already given me everything he has. He has given me his very spirit to dwell in me, to provide for me, to clothe me. And when you realize that, it becomes easy to celebrate when a lost brother or sister returns to the family and is blessed by the Father. When you know that everything that God has, he has made available to you, his provision, his name, his robe of righteousness, his peace, and he's freely given it to me, then it becomes easy to rejoice when I see someone in my world who has made poor decisions actually turn away from those poor decisions and be blessed by God. So while in the past I have found myself in the brother shoes, I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be the one who goes out and runs out with the Father and rejoices when somebody who was making bad decisions comes back. I don't want to shame them. I don't want to condemn them. I don't want to somehow try to feel bitter because they're being blessed. I want to be right there with the Father, like welcoming them and just blessing them and celebrating that return, because I'm secure in the fact that he calls me his dear child.
Yeah.
And everything he has, it's mine.
Contrasting this parable, I never really thought about this until now. We always use this parable as like an example. Okay, this, of what we're like. But let's contrast actually God. Let's put God as the father, Jesus as the older brother, and us as the prodigal son, or humanity as the prodigal son. What's the difference? Well, the older brother, first of all, volunteered himself to go out and to go find that brother and then die for that brother in order to save him, to bring him back to his father.
Yeah. So he could be
And it was
restored.
it was a father's idea. Older son, you're with me. I love you. I need you to do something for me. I need you to go rescue your brother, and it may kill you. In fact, it will kill you. Will you do that? And the older brother, because he loved his father so much, he said, "Yeah, Father, I'm going to do that for you." And he went and sacrificed his life and enabled us to come back. Man, that's powerful.
I want to be like Jesus.
Yeah. But look at this brother's attitude. He saw himself as a slave to his father.
Yeah.
He says, "All these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me."
Which
That's
means he
his
wasn't
attitude.
even doing it out of love.
Right. Compared to Jesus, who says, "I love the Father so much. Anything he says, I say." Anything I see him do, I do. In fact, Jesus went on to say, I don't say or do anything unless the Father has already said it or done it. Now, there's the difference between that son and this son. And then Jesus went out and rescued the brother.
Yeah.
So, and that's how we should be. We should be more like Jesus. If we have that attitude, like you just mentioned, of all that God has for us is available. We're seated with him. And, all the blessings of the Lord are ours. He's got not only heaven open for us, but he's got heaven on earth ready for us to go. So we don't have anything to be jealous of or envy of. Now we're in a state of love, and it's our pleasure to do what the Father says. Now we should be going out and rescuing the prodigal sons and daughters. We should be seeking and saving those who are lost, just like Jesus did. And that's the message of the gospel. And you can see that in Christianity, the difference. You said you felt like that, brother, before, as I have, but you can see whole groups and denominations of people who are like that older brother.
Yeah.
Who hate the world.
Yeah.
Who protest the world and condemn the world. And yet we don't see the Father or Jesus condemning them. We see them looking for them, loving them, wanting them to come back, and enticing them with words of love and compassion. That's the true Father's heart, and that should be our hearts. And so so then you see other denominations and beliefs that are like that, very missions oriented, very service oriented. That's what we need to be like.
Yeah, that's what we want to be like. That's what we want to encourage you all to be like as well, who are listening.
That's the real family that we're being born into. It's not this imperfect family where there's sibling rivalries and all this kind of crazy stuff. It's a perfect family that God's inviting us to come home to.
I just want to say to anybody who's listening right now, maybe it's been a long time since you've been in the house of God. It's not too late. If you're hearing this, it means you're listening. It means maybe there's something happening inside of you. It's not too late. Come to your senses, get up out of the pig pen that you've been in and come back to the household of God. Come back to a Father who is waiting to run out and greet you and love you and welcome you back in. He won't condemn you. He won't put you down. He will not shame you for the fact that you were gone. He will welcome you back. And it even says he will celebrate and rejoice over you coming back to him. All right, today I'm speaking the blessing of the Heavenly Father over your lives today. His blessing of easy forgiveness, no shame over your past choices, and his joyful restoration of you to his household as you turn to him today. I pray that you are like the Father today as you encounter others. Be quick to forgive and quick to rejoice in the restoration and blessings of others. Go be the church in your world. If you feel blessed by the I Will Be Your Church podcast, please subscribe so you never miss a day, and then share it with your friends. Check out our website, iwillbeyourchurch.com, to learn more about us, check out Ben's blog, connect with us on social media, and become part of this church family movement.